Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you basically some of the differences between an IO psychologist and an HRM, and basically what your job prospects are, what salaries people make in this field, and hopefully it'll help you decide between studying HRM or IO psychology. All right, let's get into it. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go on ONET and I'm looking up HR. I also have another tab open on ONET where I'm looking up industrial organizational psychology. So you can see that human resource management doesn't have a bright outlook, which basically means the bright outlook little sun thing just basically means that ONET projects that this is going to be a growing field with lots of jobs in the future. So you'll notice both human resource managers and IO psychologists don't have that on next to their names. So that is noteworthy, something to note. So if you click in here, you will see just a list of tasks. You can see kind of like just an overview of the job. It tells you knowledge, skills, and abilities that you need for a specific job. And it also tells you the outlook of the job, average salaries, and things like that. So I'm starting out with tasks. We want to specifically look at what tasks are different or similar to IO psychology, and really what a human resource manager does, comparing that to an IO psychologist and what their tasks are. So I'm opening up, I'm not going to read through all these for you. I'll let you look and skim at that yourself. But just at first glimpse here, it looks like HR managers, their jobs are more practical in nature. Like they're more focused on creating policies, being a liaison between employees and managers, making sure that there's compliance in organizations and in the department, dealing with difficulties with staff, basically issues with disputes with managers, things like that, and turnover and whatnot. Whereas if you go to the IO psychology tab, you'll notice that it's really focused a lot on research and data analysis, presenting information to an organization, so that the information can be used in practical ways, but not really being the person per se to put those practices in place. It's more to gather data, analyze it, and tell organizations this is what this means and this is how you can use it. Whether IO psychologists choose to put those, practices in place as part of their, practice or career, job function, that's up to them usually, unless you're an internal consultant, and then maybe they'll require you to be head of the projects. But you won't see that as much of a focus in IO psychology, but you will see that as more of a focus in HR, where you're putting those practices really into place. And it's kind of like your job to really make sure that those practices, that things are run practically, I guess I'll say. Okay, and if we go to the technology skills, it looks like there's a lot of, there's some similarities in the technology skills between HR and IO psychologists. You'll notice, though, that there's an accounting part in the HR one, which you won't see here in the IO psych page, because like I said before in another video, IO psychologists don't do much accounting unless it's accounting for their own business, but they can hire accountants for that. But yeah, you're not going to see an IO psychologist do a lot of accounting stuff, so they wouldn't use the accounting software that an HR manager would. Um, but you could see them, but you could see them using, let's see, you could see them using like SPSS. It looks like HR people and IO psychologists both use SPSS. And some human resource software may be used in both fields. Presentation software, obviously. But yeah, the accounting thing, that's the huge thing that catches my eye. That's a huge difference between the two. You're not going to see a lot of IO psychologists use accounting. So if we get into the work activities, you can see that IO psychologists are mainly focused on getting information, establishing and maintaining interpersonal relationships, making decisions, solving problems, analyzing data or information, communicating with people outside of the organization and within the organization. So you can see that it is pretty focused with HR on kind of some of the same things like resolving problems, communication, interpersonal relationships, but you'll also see the staffing part, which is not part of, I mean, an IO psychologist can do staffing and can specialize in talent management or onboarding and recruitment, things like that, but it's not their main, unless they specialize in that, it's not their main like focus. Whereas an HR person, that's like one of their main work activities. But you can see a longer list of work activities for each thing if you look on ONET. I'm not going to go into detail with that either, and I'll let you read through that on your own. So here you can see job zone. Extensive preparation needed is what it says, job zone 5. Whereas with HR, job zone 4, considerable preparation needed. One of the key things to notice here is it says that for HRM, you need a 4-year degree, but some HRMs don't need a 4-year degree. You notice it doesn't say anything about needing a master's or a doctorate in this field. And you only need 2 to 4 years of preparation. Whereas with an IO psychologist, it says that many have a master's degree, some have PhDs. The MD or JD is just a general thing that they add. Obviously, you don't need a medical doctorate or a Juris doctorate to be an IO psychologist. But yeah, you'll see the preparation is 4 years or more to prepare for that, whereas with HRM, it's 2 to 4 years and considerably less, preparation is needed. So I live in Wisconsin. It lets you look up different stats by state. So I am interested in, before I do that, I'm going to show you the education. So 74% of HRMs have bachelor degrees. Only 9% have post-bac certifications or master's degrees. You notice it doesn't even mention PhDs because it's probably not even necessary, like it mentioned. If you go down to IO psychologists, 48% have doctorates, 47% have masters, 5% have postdocs. So you'll see that it doesn't even mention bachelor's degrees because most of people in the field have graduate degrees. So that's important. If you're somebody who doesn't want to go to school for a while or a long time, if you want to do your 4-year bachelor degree and be done, then HRM might be the way to go for you. If you don't mind going to grad school, then you can consider IO psychology. But again, if you're interested in HRM, you probably should do HRM. And I'll talk more about why that is in a second here. I wanted to show you this interesting tidbit here. So, ONET has an interest profiler. If you take the quiz on My Next Move, it'll tell you kind of like what your interest code is, and that will help you when you're looking at jobs on ONET to see what your like personality or interests might, align with, if it aligns with that job. So if you scored investigative, enterprising, and artistic and social, you might like IO psychology. If you scored enterprising, social, and conventional, you might like HRM. So just briefly talking about the differences, enterprising people, I mean, you can read the definition yourself. I don't have to read it for you, but IO psychology is more investigative. It's more looking at the science behind things, looking at the data analysis, and helping organizations use that data in a practical way. Whereas HRM is way more practical. We're focusing on policies, procedures, and really focusing on basically operations, I guess is what you can say. So it's quite different because with IO, you have a little bit more creative freedom, and as far as like research and different things like that and how to apply it. Whereas with HRM, it's more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more like, procedural, I'll say. So this is what I was talking about before. So you can look by state to see what the wages are for a certain career. So this one says $50.63 an hour or $105,000 a year for IO psychologists. That's just in the nation. And then $60.69 an hour for HRM, $126,000 annually for HRM, and this is the median. These are the median wages in the state, in the US. So I live in Wisconsin, and I'm interested in looking at how that differs from the state of Wisconsin versus like the whole country. And you can see the projected job growth is 5 to 10% for HRM, which is average. And you can see that IO is slower than average growth, which is, I mentioned that in another video. The job openings is projected to be 300 between the next 10 years, 2020 to 2030. So that is significantly different from HRM. That's kind of what I was talking about before in another video. IO psychology jobs are just not that plentiful, and it's not projected to be very plentiful in the next 10 years, whereas HRM, over 14,000 jobs are projected to open up in the next 10 years. So that is another important factor to think about when you're thinking about school. Okay, so we're looking here at Wisconsin. So HRM people make, on average, $119,000 a year in the state of Wisconsin. The lower part of that would be 78,000. The higher part of that would be 183,000, almost 184. Versus the United States, which you can see the United States on average, the HRM people make more than that. But that's not surprising to me because Wisconsin has a lower cost of living than a lot of states in the U.S., so it makes sense that they would make less money here. So yeah, but if you scroll down, this is a new thing that I didn't notice before. I don't know if it's always been here, but I didn't notice this before. But they have a breakdown according to location within Wisconsin, which is pretty cool. Oh yeah, they did have this before. I guess I just never compared it across different areas of Wisconsin. But you can see, depending on where you are in the state, that your pay will vary. Obviously, more metropolitan areas will make more money than the more suburban or rural areas. So in Wisconsin, IO psychologists there's not enough data. And that does not surprise me because there's not a lot of IO psychologists in the state of Wisconsin. There are some, but there are not enough to get a good tabulation on this to like this scale. So all you can really do is just look at what the average is in the U.S. So if you compare the U.S. averages for IO psychologists versus HRM people make more money on average than IO psychologists in the U.S. So that is something worth noting. If you are money driven, then that is really something that you need to think about, because human resource managers make more money right now, and job openings are projected to continue to grow according to the average across the country. Okay, so all that being said, after looking at ONET, to me, just looking at that data shows that whoever, if you're interested in HR, you really should study HR. You should really go to school for that and not for IO. You'd be doing yourself a disservice. Now, I said this in one of my previous videos when I was talking about the curriculum differences between HRM and IO Psych. They really are different fields. And that comes even down to what two different individuals in the field study. So if you are passionate about HRM and you want to go IO, or you're thinking about going IO, I would suggest you reconsider and think about HR again, because that is specifically what that degree program is for. Also, according to ONET, people in HRM actually make more money on average in the US than people in the IO field. And so that's really interesting, and that's an important thing to consider, because you don't need to go to school for as long as people in IO Psych. So your actual return on investment is probably a little bit higher. If you did decide to go to grad school, then you'll be making more money anyways than an average IOer in the US. So that's important. It sounds like you save more money as far as education goes, because you don't need a doctorate. You don't even really need a master's. But if you did go that route and you got a master's, you'd still probably make more money than an IOer in the field. And so that is important to consider. If you are somebody who was on the fence, I hope this video helped you a little bit to get some clarity about what your role might look like, and also what your job prospects would be in the future. Because like I said, HRM people, the job growth is higher than IO, at least projected. Things can change, but as of right now, that's what it looks like. All right, I hope this video gave you some clarity and helped you a little bit, and thanks. And if you want to see more content, like and subscribe. If you have any video content that you would like to see, comment below. Thanks. Bye.